The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Kensington Palace as Kate Middleton stood at the tall windows of her private sitting room. Her fingers traced the delicate pattern on the curtains while her mind wandered to places she rarely allowed it to go. The weight of royal duties had been pressing down on her shoulders more heavily than usual, and today felt different somehow. She had woken before dawn with an unexplained heaviness in her chest. William had already left for an early meeting with palace advisors, kissing her forehead gently before slipping out of their bedroom. The children were still sleeping peacefully in their rooms, unaware of the storm brewing in their mother's heart. Kate walked slowly to her dressing table and sat down, staring at her reflection in the ornate mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed tired, despite the careful makeup and perfectly styled hair. Behind her composed exterior, emotions swirled like autumn leaves caught in a windstorm. She had become an expert at hiding her true feelings, a skill that came with the territory of being a member of the royal family. The phone on her desk buzzed softly with another scheduling request from her private secretary. 3 charity events this week, a state dinner next Tuesday, and a tour of a children's hospital on Friday. Each commitment was important, each cause close to her heart, but sometimes the endless parade of obligations felt overwhelming. She picked up the phone and responded with her usual grace and efficiency, confirming the arrangements while her heart yearned for something simpler. As she set the phone down, memories flooded back to her university days when life was uncomplicated. She remembered walking across the campus at St. Andrews, books tucked under her arm, worried only about upcoming exams and weekend plans with friends. Those days seemed like a lifetime ago, before she became the Duchess of Cambridge, before every move was scrutinized by the media and the public. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. One of the palace staff entered with the morning newspapers, placing them carefully on the side table. Kate's stomach tightened as she saw her photograph on several front pages. The headlines speculated about everything from her fashion choices to her relationship with other members of the royal family. She had learned long ago not to read every article, but sometimes the constant attention felt suffocating. The sound of children's laughter echoed from the hallway, and Kate's face brightened instantly. George, Charlotte, and Louis were awake and probably causing their usual delightful chaos with their nanny. These moments with her children were her anchor, the reminder of what truly mattered beyond the pomp and protocol of royal life. She made her way to the nursery, where she found Charlotte attempting to braid her doll's hair, while George built an elaborate castle with his blocks. Louis was toddling around, babbling happily to himself and occasionally knocking over his brother's careful constructions. The scene was beautifully normal, and for a moment Kate felt the tension in her shoulders ease. "Mummy, look what I made," Charlotte called out, holding up her doll with pride. The braid was lopsided and loose, but Charlotte's beaming smile made it perfect. Kate knelt down beside her daughter, helping to secure the braid with a small ribbon. "It's absolutely beautiful, darling," Kate said, meaning every word. These genuine moments of joy with her children were precious gems in a life that often felt like a carefully choreographed performance. After breakfast with the children, Kate retreated to her office to review the day's schedule. Her private secretary briefed her on the upcoming charity luncheon, going over the guest list and the key points she should address in her speech. Everything was planned down to the minute, from the time she would arrive to the exact moment she would leave. As the morning progressed, Kate found herself going through the motions with practiced ease. She changed into her carefully selected outfit for the charity event, each piece chosen by her styling team to send the right message. The navy blue dress was elegant but not too formal, the jewelry modest but refined. Every detail had been considered and approved. The car ride to the venue was quiet, giving Kate time to collect her thoughts. She gazed out the window at the London streets, watching ordinary people going about their daily lives. A mother pushed a stroller while talking on her phone. A businessman hurried past clutching his coffee, and children played in a small park. Their lives seemed so wonderfully uncomplicated compared to the goldfish bowl existence she had grown accustomed to. At the charity luncheon, Kate transformed into the poised public figure everyone expected to see. She smiled warmly, made thoughtful conversation with the guests, and delivered her speech with passion and conviction. The cause was genuinely important to her, supporting mental health initiatives for young people, and she spoke from the heart about the challenges facing today's youth. But even as she engaged with the guests and listened to their stories, part of her mind remained distant. She found herself watching other people's genuine reactions and wondering what it would feel like to express her emotions so freely. The weight of constant composure was becoming harder to bear with each passing day. The event concluded successfully, with generous donations pledged and important connections made for the charity. As Kate's car pulled away from the venue, she leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes. Another duty fulfilled, another public appearance completed flawlessly, but the emptiness inside seemed to grow larger. When she returned to Kensington Palace, the afternoon light was beginning to fade. The children were having their tea in the kitchen, chattering excitedly about their day's adventures. Kate joined them, grateful for their innocent joy and unconditional love. In their presence, she could be simply Mummy, rather than the Duchess of Cambridge. As evening approached, Kate found herself back in her sitting room, the same place where the day had begun. The palace was quieter now, with most of the staff having finished their duties. She stood again at the tall windows, watching the sun set over London, and wondered when William would return home. The loneliness that had been building throughout the day was becoming impossible to ignore, and she desperately needed someone who truly understood the unique pressures of their life together. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 8 times as Kate settled into her favorite armchair in the sitting room. The children had been tucked into bed after their evening routine of stories and lullabies, and the palace had taken on its familiar nighttime quiet. She held a cup of chamomile tea in her hands, hoping the warm liquid would calm the restlessness that had been growing inside her all day. William had called earlier to say his meetings were running late, something about urgent matters concerning the Commonwealth that required his immediate attention. Kate had assured him it was perfectly fine, her voice steady and understanding as always, but inside she felt a familiar pang of disappointment. These late nights had become more frequent lately, leaving her alone with her thoughts more often than she cared to admit. She picked up a book from the side table, one of the novels she had been trying to read for months between her various commitments. The words on the page seemed to blur together as her mind wandered to the conversation she had overheard earlier between 2 palace staff members. They had been discussing the upcoming royal tour, speculating about the challenges of traveling with young children and maintaining the packed schedule of official engagements. The tour would take them to 3 different countries over 2 weeks, with carefully planned visits to schools, hospitals, and cultural sites. While Kate genuinely looked forward to meeting people and supporting important causes, the thought of being constantly in the public eye for such an extended period felt exhausting. Every gesture would be analyzed, every outfit critiqued, and every interaction with William scrutinized for signs of marital harmony or discord. She set the book aside and walked to her desk, where a stack of correspondence waited for her attention. Letters from charities requesting her patronage, invitations to various events, and thank you notes from organizations she had recently supported. Each letter represented people's hopes and expectations, another weight added to the invisible burden she carried. Among the correspondence was a handwritten note from her mother, Carol Middleton. The familiar script brought a smile to Kate's face for the first time all day. Her mother wrote about the garden at the family home in Berkshire, how the roses were blooming beautifully this year, and how she missed having Kate drop by for impromptu cups of tea and long conversations. Reading her mother's words, Kate felt a sharp longing for the simplicity of her childhood home. She remembered lazy Sunday afternoons in the garden, helping her mother tend to the flowers while they chatted about everything and nothing. Those moments of genuine connection seemed precious now, when every conversation in her current life felt measured and purposeful. The sound of a car on the gravel driveway caught her attention, and Kate's heart lifted slightly. William was finally home. She listened to his footsteps in the entrance hall, the quiet exchange with the security staff, and the familiar sound of him climbing the stairs. But instead of coming to find her, she heard his footsteps continue down the hallway toward his study. Kate felt a familiar tightness in her chest. She understood that William often needed time to decompress after long days of official duties, but tonight she desperately wanted to share her feelings with someone who would understand. The isolation that came with their royal roles was something they both struggled with, but lately, they seemed to be handling it separately rather than together. She returned to her armchair and closed her eyes, allowing herself to remember their early days together at university. William had been just another student then, albeit one with extraordinary circumstances. They could walk hand in hand across campus, argue about politics in the student union, and dream about the future without the weight of constitutional responsibility. Their love had been simple and uncomplicated, built on shared laughter and quiet moments of understanding. Now their relationship existed within the framework of duty and protocol. Even their private moments were influenced by the knowledge that they were representatives of the monarchy, that their marriage was both personal and institutional. The spontaneity that had once characterized their romance had been replaced by careful planning and consideration of public perception. The tea had grown cold in her hands, but Kate continued to hold the cup, finding comfort in its familiar weight. She thought about the other royal wives who had come before her, wondering how they had navigated the challenges of public life while maintaining their sense of self. Did they ever feel this overwhelming loneliness? This sense of being trapped in a beautiful cage? A photograph on the mantelpiece caught her eye, taken during their engagement announcement. Both she and William looked radiant and hopeful, excited about the future they would build together. The Kate in that photograph had no idea about the complexities that lay ahead, the constant balance between personal happiness and public duty. The door to the sitting room opened softly, and William appeared in the doorway. He looked tired, his tie loosened and his hair slightly disheveled. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the room, two people who loved each other deeply but sometimes felt like strangers passing in the night. "Sorry about tonight," William said quietly, moving toward her. "The Commonwealth Summit planning is more complex than we anticipated." Kate nodded, managing a small smile. "I understand. How did it go?" William sank into the chair across from her, running his hands through his hair. "Challenging. There are political sensitivities we need to navigate carefully." He paused, studying her face. "You look tired. How was your day?" For a moment, Kate considered telling him everything. About the loneliness that had been building inside her, about the weight of constant public scrutiny, about how she sometimes missed the person she used to be before she became the Duchess of Cambridge. But looking at his exhausted face, she chose the easier path. "It was fine," she said simply. "The charity luncheon went well. They raised more than expected for the mental health program." William's face brightened slightly. "That's wonderful news. Your work with that organization has been remarkable." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the familiarity of their shared space providing some comfort. Outside, London continued its nighttime rhythm, but inside the palace walls, time seemed suspended. Kate watched her husband's profile in the lamplight, noting the new lines around his eyes that spoke of the growing responsibilities on his shoulders. "The children asked when we're going to visit Granny and Grandpa again," Kate said, breaking the silence. "Charlotte particularly misses the horses at Highgrove." "We should arrange something soon," William replied. "Maybe after this upcoming tour. The children need those normal family moments." Kate nodded, though she wondered if any moments in their lives could truly be called normal anymore. Even family visits required security arrangements and careful scheduling. Still, she treasured those times when they could be simply parents and children, grandparents and grandchildren, without the formality of their public roles. The following morning brought an unexpected change to Kate's carefully planned schedule. Her private secretary arrived with news that the afternoon engagement had been moved to accommodate a last-minute request from Buckingham Palace. Instead of visiting the Children's Center as planned, Kate would be attending a reception for international diplomats alongside other senior members of the royal family. Kate received this news with her usual composed grace, but internally she felt a wave of disappointment. The Children's Center visit had been something she was genuinely looking forward to, a chance to engage with young people and their families in a meaningful way. The diplomatic reception, while important, felt like another performance where she would smile politely and make appropriate conversation while her heart yearned for something more authentic. As she prepared for the reception, Kate stood before her wardrobe with her styling team, selecting an outfit that would convey the right message to an international audience. The emerald green dress they chose was elegant and diplomatic, paired with jewelry that had historical significance to the crown. Every detail was considered for its symbolic meaning and potential interpretation by the media. The Irony was not lost on Kate that she spent considerable time thinking about where to appear relatable and approachable, when the very act of such careful consideration highlighted the distance between her life and that of ordinary people. She remembered her university days when she would throw on whatever was clean and comfortable, never worrying about the message her clothing might send to the world. During the drive to the reception venue, Kate gazed out at the London streets once again. She noticed a young mother struggling with a pushchair while juggling shopping bags and trying to keep a toddler from running into the road. The woman looked harried and overwhelmed, but there was something beautifully real about her situation. Kate felt a strange envy for that mother's problems, which seemed so wonderfully normal compared to the complexities of royal life. The reception was held at a prestigious London hotel, its grand ballroom filled with diplomats, politicians, and other dignitaries from around the world. Kate moved through the room with practiced ease, engaging in conversations about international relations, cultural exchange, and global challenges. She was genuinely interested in these topics and found some of the discussions stimulating, but the formal nature of every interaction left her feeling emotionally distant. During a brief lull in the evening, Kate found herself standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The lights of London twinkled below, each one representing thousands of people living their private lives away from the spotlight that constantly illuminated her own existence. She wondered what those people were doing at that moment. What simple joys and everyday sorrows filled their evenings. "You seem contemplative tonight," said a voice beside her. Kate turned to see Lady Margaret, a longtime friend of the royal family and someone she had known for several years. Margaret was one of the few people who had known Kate both before and after her marriage to William, providing a unique perspective on the changes in her life. "Just enjoying the view," Kate replied with a smile. "It's easy to forget how beautiful London is from this height." Margaret studied Kate's face with the intuition that comes from years of friendship. "You know, I remember when you first started appearing at these events. You had such excitement in your eyes, such enthusiasm for everything. That light is still there, but it seems dimmer lately." Kate felt a flutter of vulnerability at Margaret's observation. It was rare for anyone to comment on her emotional state so directly, and she wasn't sure how to respond. The training she had received in managing her public persona hadn't prepared her for moments of genuine concern from friends. "Royal life takes some adjustment," Kate said carefully. "But I'm grateful for the opportunities it provides to make a difference." "Of course," Margaret replied gently. "But don't forget to take care of yourself in the process. Even duchesses need time to simply be human." The conversation was interrupted by another diplomat seeking Kate's attention, but Margaret's words stayed with her for the rest of the evening. As she continued to fulfill her duties at the reception, part of her mind kept returning to the idea of being simply human. When had that become such a luxury? The reception concluded successfully, with important diplomatic connections strengthened and cultural bridges built. As Kate's car pulled away from the hotel, she felt the familiar mixture of satisfaction and emptiness that followed most of her public engagements. She had performed her role perfectly, but the performance itself was becoming increasingly exhausting. Back at Kensington Palace, Kate found the evening routine well underway. The children had been fed and bathed, and William was reading bedtime stories in the nursery. She could hear his animated voice bringing characters to life, and the delighted giggles of their children in response. These sounds of family happiness provided some comfort after the formal atmosphere of the reception. Kate joined them for the final goodnight kisses, cherishing the warm hugs and sleepy smiles of George, Charlotte, and Louis. In their innocent eyes, she was simply Mummy, not the Duchess of Cambridge or a representative of the crown. Their love was unconditional and uncomplicated, a precious reminder of what truly mattered. After the children were settled, Kate and William retreated to their private sitting room. William was reviewing briefing papers for the next day's engagements, while Kate attempted to focus on her own correspondence. But the words on the page seemed to swim before her eyes as her mind processed the events of the day and the conversation with Lady Margaret. "How was the reception?" William asked, looking up from his papers. "Productive," Kate replied automatically. The Australian High Commissioner was particularly interested in our youth mental health initiatives. William nodded approvingly. "Your work in that area is gaining real international recognition. You should be proud of the impact you're making." Kate smiled and thanked him, but inside she felt a growing disconnect between the public praise for her work and her private emotional state. She was making a difference, she knew that intellectually, but emotionally she felt increasingly isolated from the world she was trying to help. The evening stretched on with each of them absorbed in their respective duties. William worked on his speeches for the upcoming tour, while Kate reviewed proposals from various charities seeking her patronage. They sat in the same room, but their individual responsibilities created an invisible barrier between them. As the clock approached midnight, Kate found herself struggling to concentrate on the documents before her. The weight of accumulated emotion from the past few days was becoming harder to ignore. She excused herself and walked to the bathroom, where she splashed cool water on her face and stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her appeared perfectly composed, but Kate could see the sadness in her own eyes that no amount of makeup or royal training could disguise. She thought about Margaret's words about taking care of herself, and wondered when she had stopped knowing how to do that. The person she had been before her royal life seemed like a distant memory, someone she had loved but could no longer access. The next morning arrived with unexpected intensity. Kate woke before dawn with a tightness in her chest that made breathing feel difficult. She lay still in bed, listening to William's steady breathing beside her, and tried to understand what was happening to her body and mind. The emotional weight she had been carrying seemed to have manifested into something physical and undeniable. She slipped quietly from the bedroom and made her way to the kitchen, hoping that the familiar routine of making tea would provide some comfort. The palace staff wouldn't arrive for another hour, giving her precious moments of solitude in the normally bustling household. As she waited for the kettle to boil, Kate found herself gripping the edge of the counter, fighting against a wave of overwhelming emotion that threatened to break through her carefully maintained composure. The sound of small footsteps on the stairs interrupted her struggle. Charlotte appeared in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit and rubbing sleepy eyes. Even at her young age, Charlotte seemed to possess an intuitive understanding of emotions that often surprised the adults around her. "Mummy, why are you sad?" Charlotte asked with the directness that only children possess. Kate's breath caught in her throat. She knelt down to Charlotte's level, smoothing her daughter's tousled hair while searching for an age-appropriate explanation for feelings she couldn't fully understand herself. Sometimes grown-ups feel a little overwhelmed. "Darling," Kate said softly, "like when you have too many toys to choose from and can't decide which one to play with." Charlotte nodded solemnly, as if this explanation made perfect sense. "When I feel like that, I just pick my rabbit," she said, holding up her beloved toy. "Maybe you need to find your rabbit, Mummy." The innocent wisdom of her daughter's words hit Kate with unexpected force. When had she lost sight of the simple things that brought her comfort and joy? When had life become so complicated that she needed a 4-year-old to remind her how to find peace? They sat together at the kitchen table, sharing toast and jam while Charlotte chattered about her plans for the day. Kate found herself genuinely laughing at her daughter's stories about the adventures she planned for her dolls, feeling some of the tension in her chest begin to ease. These unguarded moments with her children were becoming increasingly precious, islands of authenticity in an ocean of obligation. When William joined them for breakfast, he immediately noticed the change in Kate's demeanor. Years of marriage had taught him to read the subtle signs of her emotional state, even when she tried to hide them. He suggested that Kate take some time for herself that afternoon, offering to handle the children's activities so she could rest. Kate accepted his offer gratefully, though she wasn't sure what she would do with the unexpected free time. The concept of leisure had become so foreign to her that she almost didn't know how to approach it. Her schedule was typically planned weeks in advance, with every hour accounted for and purposeful. After William left for his morning engagements and the children were settled with their nanny, Kate found herself wandering through the palace corridors with no particular destination in mind. She passed the formal drawing rooms with their priceless artwork and historical artifacts, spaces that were beautiful but somehow felt more like museum exhibits than places where people actually lived. Eventually, she found herself in the garden, a space that had always provided her with some sense of peace. The autumn air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the last blooms of the season. Kate sat on a bench beneath an old oak tree, allowing herself to simply exist without purpose or agenda for the first time in weeks. As she sat in the garden, Memories began to surface of simpler times. She remembered weekend trips to her family's home in Berkshire, where she could wander through the countryside without security details or photographers. She thought about lazy Sunday mornings when she could stay in bed reading, or spontaneous decisions to meet friends for coffee without consulting multiple calendars and security protocols. The sound of her phone buzzing brought her back to the present. Her private secretary was calling with updates about the upcoming tour, questions about wardrobe selections, and scheduling adjustments that needed her approval. Even in her moments of attempted solitude, the demands of royal life found ways to intrude. After ending the call, Kate felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle back onto her shoulders. She walked back toward the palace, passing the windows of the rooms where she conducted her official business. Through the glass, she could see the stacks of correspondence waiting for her attention, the briefing papers for upcoming engagements, and the endless stream of decisions that required her input. Inside her private office, Kate attempted to focus on her work, but found her concentration fractured. She started several letters to charitable organizations, but couldn't find the right words to express her support. She reviewed proposals for new patronages but struggled to feel the enthusiasm that had once come naturally to her when considering new causes to champion. The afternoon mail brought an unexpected surprise. A handwritten letter from a young woman whose mental health charity Kate had visited several months earlier. The writer described how Kate's visit had inspired her to seek help for her own struggles with anxiety and depression. She wrote about the hope she had found in Kate's words about the importance of mental health awareness and the courage it had given her to speak openly about her challenges. Reading this letter, Kate felt a complex mixture of emotions. She was genuinely moved by the young woman's courage and grateful that her work had made a real difference in someone's life. But she also felt a sharp irony in being seen as a source of hope for mental health, while struggling with her own emotional well-being. The contradiction was almost overwhelming. Here she was, publicly advocating for people to seek help and speak openly about their mental health struggles, while privately feeling unable to address her own growing emotional distress. The very platform that allowed her to help others seemed to prevent her from helping herself. As the afternoon wore on, Kate found herself standing once again at the tall windows of her sitting room, watching the world beyond the palace walls. She thought about the young woman who had written to her, wondering if she had found the support she needed, if she had people in her life who truly understood her struggles. The realization hit Kate with startling clarity. She had become so focused on caring for others that she had forgotten how to care for herself. The role of Duchess had gradually consumed the person of Kate, leaving her feeling lost within her own life. She was surrounded by people who depended on her, who looked to her for strength and inspiration, but she had no one to whom she could turn when she needed strength herself. The sound of car doors closing in the courtyard below announced William's return. Kate watched from the window as he spoke briefly with his security detail before disappearing into the palace. She knew he would come looking for her soon, would ask about her afternoon, and whether the time to herself had been helpful. Kate prepared herself to give him the response he would want to hear, the assurance that she was feeling better and ready to resume her duties. But as she practiced the words in her mind, she felt a growing resistance to continuing this pattern of hidden struggles and false reassurances. Something needed to change, but she wasn't sure she had the courage to make it happen. The evening meal with the children provided a temporary reprieve from Kate's internal struggles. George entertained everyone with dramatic reenactments of his football practice, complete with sound effects and exaggerated celebrations. Charlotte showed off her latest artwork, a colorful drawing of their family that included several dogs despite them only having one. Louis contributed his own commentary in the form of enthusiastic babbling and attempts to feed his vegetables to anyone within reach. William seemed more relaxed than he had been in days, laughing genuinely at the children's antics and engaging fully in their conversations about school, friends, and weekend plans. Kate watched him with a mixture of love and longing, remembering when they had been able to be this present with each other, not just with their children. After the children were settled for the night, Kate and William found themselves alone in their private dining room for the first time in several days. The intimate setting, with soft lighting and no staff present, should have felt romantic and comfortable. Instead, Kate felt the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. "You seem to enjoy yourself at dinner," William observed, pouring wine for both of them. The afternoon to yourself was good for you. Kate nodded, though the truth was more complicated. The time alone had been both restorative and unsettling, giving her space to think but also highlighting how isolated she felt even within her own life. She took a sip of wine, hoping it might help her find the courage to speak more honestly. "William," she began, then stopped, uncertain how to continue. How could she explain feelings that seemed impossible to justify given their privileged life? How could she tell him that she felt lonely in a palace full of people, or that success in her royal duties felt increasingly hollow? "What is it?" William asked, his attention fully focused on her. The concern in his voice was genuine, but Kate could also hear the weariness that came from his own overwhelming responsibilities. "Do you ever feel like we're losing ourselves in all of this?" Kate asked quietly. "Like the people we used to be are disappearing behind our royal roles?" William was silent for a long moment, considering her question carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of understanding that surprised Kate. "Every day," he admitted. "Sometimes I catch glimpses of who I used to be, but they feel like memories of someone else entirely." The honesty in his response encouraged Kate to continue. "I love the work we do and I know how fortunate we are. But sometimes I feel like I'm performing my own life instead of living it. Even when we're alone together, I find myself wondering if I'm being the right kind of wife, the right kind of mother, the right kind of duchess." William reached across the table and took her hand. "You're extraordinary at all of those things," he said firmly. "But I understand what you mean. The pressure to be perfect all the time is exhausting." "I've been thinking about that young woman who wrote to me about mental health," Kate continued. "She found the courage to seek help, to be honest about her struggles. But here I am, advocating for exactly that kind of openness while hiding my own difficulties." "What difficulties?" William asked gently. "Talk to me, Kate, really talk to me." The invitation to vulnerability hung in the air between them. Kate felt herself at a crossroads, one path leading toward continued pretense and the other toward a truth that felt both necessary and terrifying. The wine and William's obvious concern gave her the courage to choose honesty. "I feel like I'm drowning," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not dramatically, not in a way that anyone would notice, but slowly, quietly, like I'm sinking beneath the surface of a life that looks perfect from the outside but feels increasingly empty from the inside. William's grip on her hand tightened. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you're carrying so much already," Kate replied. "Your responsibilities are enormous, and adding my emotional struggles to your burden seemed selfish. And because I wasn't sure if what I was feeling was legitimate or just weakness." "Kate, it's not weakness," William said firmly. "The life we lead is not normal, and it would be strange if it didn't affect us emotionally. We're still human beings, even if the world sometimes expects us to be symbols instead of people." The conversation continued late into the evening, with both of them sharing feelings they had been carrying alone. William admitted to his own struggles with the constant scrutiny and the weight of knowing that his every decision would be analyzed and criticized. He spoke about the loneliness of having few people who truly understood the unique pressures of their position. Kate felt a relief she hadn't experienced in months as she spoke openly about her feelings of isolation, her nostalgia for simpler times, and her fear that she was losing touch with the person she had been before becoming a duchess. The act of articulating these emotions somehow made them feel more manageable, less overwhelming. "I think we need help," William said eventually. "Professional help. Someone who understands the unique challenges of public life, but can help us navigate them without losing ourselves." Kate felt a flutter of anxiety at the suggestion. The idea of seeking counseling or therapy felt right, but the practical implications were daunting. How could they find someone trustworthy? How could they ensure confidentiality? What would happen if word got out that senior members of the royal family were receiving mental health support? "I know what you're thinking," William said, reading her expression. "The logistics are complicated but not impossible. We owe it to ourselves and to our children to find a way to be emotionally healthy." As they continued to discuss the possibility, Kate felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. The idea that they could address their struggles together, rather than suffering alone, transformed what had felt like an insurmountable problem into a challenge they could face as a team. "There's something else," Kate said as the evening drew toward a close. "I want to be more honest in my public work about the challenges of mental health. not in a way that compromises our privacy, but in a way that acknowledges that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, can struggle with their emotional well-being. William nodded thoughtfully. That could be powerful. If you're comfortable with that level of vulnerability, it could help a lot of people feel less alone. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, that Kate's personal struggles might actually enhance her ability to connect with and help others facing similar challenges. Sometimes the most powerful advocacy came from a place of authentic understanding, rather than distant sympathy. As they prepared for bed, Kate felt lighter than she had in weeks. The conversation hadn't solved all of their problems, but it had broken through the isolation that had been suffocating her. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she and William were truly partners again. Not just two people managing their individual responsibilities within the same household. The challenges of royal life hadn't disappeared, and Kate knew that tomorrow would bring the same pressures and expectations. But now she had hoped that they could find a way to navigate those challenges without losing themselves in the process. The following weeks brought subtle but meaningful changes to Kate and William's approach to their royal duties and personal lives. They had quietly arranged for confidential counseling sessions with a therapist who specialized in working with public figures, someone recommended through carefully vetted professional networks who understood the unique pressures of their position. Kate found the therapy sessions both challenging and liberating. For the first time in years, she had a space where she could express her thoughts and feelings without considering their impact on anyone else. The therapist helped her understand that her struggles were not a sign of weakness or ingratitude, but a natural response to the extraordinary circumstances of her life. One of the most significant insights that emerged from these sessions was the recognition that Kate had gradually lost touch with activities and interests that had once brought her joy. In her dedication to royal duties and family responsibilities, she had unconsciously abandoned many of the things that had defined her personality before her marriage. Photography had been one of Kate's greatest passions during her university years, but she rarely picked up a camera anymore except for official family portraits. She had loved hiking and outdoor activities, but these had been largely replaced by indoor engagements and formal events. Even her reading habits had shifted from novels and biographies she chose for pleasure to briefing papers and correspondence related to her work. With her therapist's encouragement, Kate began to reclaim some of these personal interests. She started carrying her camera again during private moments, capturing candid photos of the children and the changing seasons in the palace gardens. These images, taken purely for her own satisfaction rather than public consumption, reminded her of the joy she found in observing and documenting the world around her. She also arranged for private time each week to engage in physical activities that she enjoyed. Sometimes this meant early morning walks in the palace gardens before the staff arrived, or occasionally joining a private yoga class arranged away from public attention. These activities helped her reconnect with her body and provided a sense of personal agency that had been missing from her highly scheduled life. The changes in Kate's approach to her personal well-being began to influence her public work as well. During a visit to a mental health facility, she spoke more openly about the importance of self-care and the challenges that everyone faces in maintaining emotional balance. Her words carried a new authenticity that resonated deeply with both the staff and patients she met. Mental health isn't just about crisis intervention, Kate told a group of healthcare workers. It's about daily practices that help us stay connected to ourselves and maintain perspective when life becomes overwhelming. This applies to everyone regardless of their circumstances or responsibilities. The healthcare workers responded to her message with visible engagement, many nodding in recognition of their own struggles to maintain emotional balance while caring for others. Kate realized that her newfound honesty about the universal nature of mental health challenges was making her advocacy work more effective and meaningful. William, too, was benefiting from their therapy sessions and the changes they were implementing in their approach to royal life. He had begun setting firmer boundaries around his working hours, insisting on family time that was truly protected from official duties except in genuine emergencies. This shift required difficult conversations with palace staff and advisors, but the improvement in his relationship with Kate and the children made the effort worthwhile. The couple also started scheduling regular private time together, treating their relationship with the same importance they gave to their official obligations. These weekly dinner dates, often held in their private quarters with no staff present, became precious opportunities to maintain their connection as partners, rather than just co-parents and professional colleagues. During one such evening, Kate shared a realization that had emerged from her therapy sessions. "I think I've been trying so hard to be worthy of this role that I forgot the person William fell in love with was already worthy," she said. "I've been trying to become someone I thought I should be instead of growing into a better version of who I already was." William smiled at this insight. "The Kate I fell in love with at university was curious, passionate, and authentic. Those qualities are what make you extraordinary at royal work, not despite them. I'm glad you're finding your way back to her." The conversation highlighted how both of them had been unconsciously trying to suppress their natural personalities in favor of what they thought royal life required. Their therapy sessions were helping them understand that effective public service didn't require the sacrifice of their authentic selves, but rather the integration of their personal values and natural abilities with their official roles. As autumn deepened into winter, Kate found herself approaching the upcoming royal tour with a different mindset. Instead of dreading the intensive schedule and constant scrutiny, she began to see it as an opportunity to put her new understanding into practice. She worked with her team to build in moments of genuine engagement, rather than just formal presentations, and to include activities that aligned with her personal interests and expertise. The tour would include visits to schools where Kate could use her photography skills to document educational programs, outdoor activities that would allow her to demonstrate the mental health benefits of physical exercise, and informal meetings with young people, where she could share authentic insights about resilience and self-care. Kate also made the decision to be more selective about her engagements, choosing quality over quantity, and focusing on causes where she could make a meaningful impact rather than simply fulfilling ceremonial obligations. This approach required some difficult conversations with organizations that had been hoping for her patronage, but it allowed her to invest more deeply in the work that truly mattered to her. One evening, as Kate was reviewing her revised schedule for the coming months, Charlotte wandered into her office with a drawing she had made at school. The picture showed their family, but this time Kate noticed that the figure representing her was smiling broadly and appeared to be engaged in some kind of active pursuit, rather than standing formally. "Mummy, you look happier," Charlotte observed with the intuitive wisdom that continued to surprise Kate. "I feel happier, darling," Kate replied, realizing as she said it that this was genuinely true. "Sometimes grown-ups need to remember how to take care of themselves just like we teach you to take care of yourself." Charlotte nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Like brushing our teeth and eating vegetables and being kind to our friends?" "Exactly like that," Kate said, pulling her daughter close. "But for grown-ups, it also means doing things that make us feel like ourselves and talking about our feelings when they get too big to carry alone." The simple wisdom of explaining self-care in terms a child could understand helped Kate appreciate how far she had come in her own journey. The practices that were helping her reclaim her sense of self were not complicated or mysterious, but rather the basic elements of human well-being that she had somehow lost in the complexity of royal life. The day that would mark a turning point in Kate's emotional journey began like many others, with carefully planned engagements and a schedule managed down to the minute. However, this particular morning carried special significance as she prepared for a visit to a youth mental health center, where she would be announcing a major new initiative that she had helped develop over the past several months. As Kate dressed for the engagement, she chose her outfit with particular care, not for the cameras or the fashion critics, but because she wanted to feel authentically herself. The royal blue dress was one of her favorites, comfortable and elegant without being ostentatious. She paired it with minimal jewelry and wore her hair in a style that felt natural rather than overly formal. The drive to the mental health center gave Kate time to reflect on how much had changed since that difficult evening weeks ago when she had finally opened up to William about her struggles. The therapy sessions, the renewed focus on personal well-being, and the honest conversations with her husband had not eliminated the challenges of royal life, but they had given her tools to navigate them more effectively. At the youth center, Kate was greeted by enthusiastic staff members and young people who had been eagerly anticipating her visit. But this time, instead of feeling the familiar anxiety about meeting expectations and performing her role perfectly, Kate felt genuinely excited to share the work they had been developing together. The new initiative focused on peer support networks for young people struggling with mental health challenges, something Kate had become passionate about after learning how isolated many teenagers felt when dealing with anxiety, depression, and other emotional difficulties. The program would train young people to support their peers, creating communities of understanding rather than relying solely on adult intervention. As Kate spoke with the teenagers who would be part of the pilot program, she found herself sharing insights from her own recent experiences with therapy and self-care. Without revealing personal details or compromising her privacy, she was able to speak authentically about the importance of seeking help, the value of honest conversation, and the need for everyone to prioritize their emotional well-being. One of the most important things I've learned recently, Kate told a group of 16-year-olds, is that taking care of our mental health isn't selfish or weak. It's actually one of the most generous things we can do, because when we're emotionally healthy, we're better able to care for the people around us. The young people responded to her words with visible engagement, asking thoughtful questions and sharing their own experiences with remarkable openness. Kate realized that her newfound authenticity was creating space for genuine connection in a way that her previous, more guarded approach had never achieved. During a break in the formal program, one of the teenagers approached Kate privately. The young woman, who couldn't have been more than 17, spoke with a maturity that impressed Kate deeply. "I just wanted to thank you for talking about mental health the way you do," the teenager said. "It's obvious that you really understand what it feels like, not just from books or training but from your own experience. That makes everything you say feel more real." Kate was moved by the young woman's perceptive observation. The comment highlighted something she was still learning to accept: that her struggles and vulnerabilities, rather than being weaknesses to hide, could actually enhance her ability to connect with and help others. As the day progressed, Kate participated in various activities at the center, from art therapy sessions to group discussions about coping strategies. She found herself genuinely enjoying each interaction, no longer worried about whether she was saying the right things or projecting the proper image. Her focus had shifted from performance to presence, and the difference was transformative. The highlight of the visit came during an impromptu photography workshop that Kate offered to lead. Using skills she had been rediscovering in her personal life, she helped young people explore how photography could be used as a tool for self-expression and mindfulness. Watching them discover new ways to see and capture their world reminded Kate of her own journey back to activities that brought her joy. When it was time to leave the center, Kate felt energized rather than drained, inspired rather than relieved that another duty had been completed. The experience had reminded her why she had been drawn to mental health advocacy in the first place, and how meaningful this work could be when approached with authenticity and genuine passion. On the drive back to Kensington Palace, Kate reflected on the transformation she had undergone over the past several weeks. The changes hadn't been dramatic or sudden, but rather a gradual reconnection with her essential self and a new understanding of how to integrate that self with her royal role. Her phone buzzed with a text message from William, who was traveling for his own engagements. "Saw the photos from your visit today," he wrote. "You looked radiant. Really radiant. Can't wait to hear all about it tonight." Kate smiled as she read his message, recognizing the truth in his observation. She did feel radiant, glowing with the satisfaction that came from meaningful work and authentic connection. This was the feeling she had been searching for without realizing it. The sense of alignment between her public role and her private self. That evening, after the children were settled and she and William had shared dinner together, Kate found herself back in the sitting room where her emotional journey had begun weeks earlier. But now, instead of feeling trapped by the tall windows and formal surroundings, she felt grateful for the space and the life it represented. She stood once again at the windows overlooking London. But this time her perspective had shifted entirely. The lights of the city no longer represented a world from which she was excluded, but rather communities and individuals whose lives she had the privilege to touch through her work. The weight of responsibility remained, but it felt lighter now, balanced by purpose and supported by authentic relationships. William joined her at the window, slipping his arm around her waist as they looked out at the city together. "How are you feeling?" he asked, a question that had taken on new meaning since they had started being more honest with each other about their emotional lives. "I feel like myself again," Kate replied, leaning into his embrace. "Not the person I was before royal life, but not someone completely different either. I feel like I've found a way to be both Kate and the Duchess of Cambridge without losing either one." William nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Their journey toward emotional health and authentic living was far from over, but they had found a sustainable path forward. The challenges of royal life would continue. The scrutiny and pressure would never completely disappear, but they had learned how to navigate these difficulties without sacrificing their essential selves. As they stood together in comfortable silence, Kate reflected on the quiet tears that had marked the beginning of her emotional journey. Those tears had been necessary, she realized now, a signal that something needed to change. They had led to conversations that needed to happen, insights that needed to be gained, and healing that needed to begin. The transformation hadn't required a dramatic upheaval of their lives, but rather a series of small, intentional changes that honored both their royal responsibilities and their human needs. Kate had learned that strength didn't require the suppression of vulnerability, that effectiveness in public service could actually be enhanced by emotional authenticity, and that the person she had been before becoming a duchess was not someone to be abandoned, but rather someone to be integrated into her evolving identity. Standing there with William, looking out at the city they served, Kate felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment of clarity and peace. The quiet tears had spoken volumes, and in learning to listen to their message, she had found her way back to herself.